My name is Lawrence Shulman. I'm a professor at the University at Buffalo School of Social Work. I'd like to describe the purpose and the structure of the workshop on teaching. It was an ongoing, voluntary group of faculty that met for 1 hour between afternoon and evening classes for the purposes of discussing teaching, with an emphasis on what I call the hidden group in the classroom. The underlying assumption was that group process in a class, any class, a large lecture class, a small class, group process could either enhance learning or create obstacles to learning. I also took the position that the role of the instructor was to pay attention and to try to influence positively class process as he or she presented the class content. The sessions consisted of my presentations of problems and issues from the participants' classes, group discussion, and mutual aid. We met twice a month in the fall and once a month in the winter and spring semester. I think I should say something about why we originally taped these sessions. For the past 30 years, one of the real joys I've had has been working with faculty around dealing with some of the major teaching issues that they face in their classes. Not only have I done it in my own schools, but I've had the opportunity, more recently with my colleague Alex Gooderman, to lead workshops every year at the Council on Social Work Education as part of the faculty development program. It became clear to me as we met year after year with these workshops, many of these faculty members were graduating from PhD programs, had been out even for a while, and had never got the real kind of help they needed for dealing with the serious problems they faced in their classroom teaching. The first time somebody confronted them, for example, as a recent PhD graduate, someone who had more experience than them in the field. The first time someone started to argue about the grades. The first time a difficult, maybe painful, and taboo subject emerged in the class. Things like abortion, things like the place of religion, etc. They were often at a loss for how to explore the content in the class culture which they helped to create that could be respectful, positive, and enhancing of learning. So I felt, as I approached my own retirement from full-time teaching, that it might be useful to create a program like this that gives new teachers, PhD students, and others the opportunity to share in the experiences that we had last year. Let me just take a few minutes to discuss how you might want to use these sessions. You might want to just start at the beginning, as the workshop did, and work through each of the 7 sessions, which I'll describe in just a few moments. That would give you a feel for the life of the workshop and how issues emerged, how they were dealt with, etc. You might not want to do that. You might just want to look at a particular session that focuses on an issue that you're concerned about. You may have come out of a class where you had midterm evaluations that weren't very helpful to you. And so a discussion of how to address negative midterm evaluations might be useful. Where would you find that on the tapes? What session? We've also done an index for you that looks at the specific topic within the session. While I would encourage you to watch the whole session, if you want to go to the specific topic, I would encourage you to watch the segment at the beginning of the session, which usually lays the groundwork for the examples that emerge during the hour, and then move to the session itself. So you may have different ways you may want to use these sessions. Whatever works for you is most important. Now that I've shared the purpose and structure of the workshop and the why it was produced in this way and how it might be used, I think it's important for you to know who participated. The group consisted of PhD students at the University of Buffalo. Some were teaching, some were getting ready to teach. There were adjunct faculty, some were new to teaching, and some were some of our most experienced and most effective faculty. There were full-time faculty in the workshop with a range of teaching experience. Some of the faculty were teaching at another school's BSW program, and there were UB faculty teaching in our foundation program and our advanced program curriculum. In this way, the workshop sessions will give you a feel for what's the same about teaching issues, whether you're at the BSW or the beginning level, or you're at a master's level, but also what are some of the differences when one teaches in these different programs. There are participants who have been in the workshop for previous years and are ongoing and continuing. And there are also new participants. In some ways, this was a classic open-ended group where people could come in and people could leave, and some had been continuing for a while, and some were brand new. Finally, and I think this is important, they were teaching a range of courses because there were similarities in the issues addressing a faculty member, whether they taught a practice course, an elective, a research, a program evaluation, or a policy course. And so during the course of the various sessions, you will hear content in each of those addressed. And what will become clear is that there are constant elements about classroom teaching that cut across all areas of content, as well as some variant elements that are introduced by the subject you are teaching. There are 7 sessions that we have for you. Some of them are edited, but most run for the full hour. Now, Program 1 is the first session of the year and includes my contracting with participants. Also, problem swapping, where I ask them to share some issues that we may be addressing during the year. For example, dealing with large classes and large classrooms compared to small seminars. Dealing with hot topics issues that engage an awful lot of emotion, such as sexual orientation, religion, race, etc. Some preliminary work is done in the first session that sets the stage for the full discussion in the sessions to follow. I would encourage you to watch the first session before you move to any of the other sessions to get the framework and the structure that we all began with. Program 2, I start to present an overview of group culture in the classroom. We talk a little bit about norms, taboos, and the different informal and formal roles that can develop it. I also ask the participants to address what makes it hard to deal with hot-button topics and what would make it easier in our own workshop. In this way, I'm trying to model for the participants exactly the kind of discussion they need to have in their own classes. The first example from a workshop participant is that of an openly lesbian instructor who's sensing anger from an openly lesbian student, who's concerned because she feels that the instructor is not hard enough on what she experiences as potentially anti-gay comments. The workshop participants explore the issue of spontaneity, taking risks, and particularly the kind of support they need from fellow colleagues and administrators in order to grow, to learn from mistakes, and to feel safe. We also begin to explore the impact of authority, that is, the authority of the instructor, on the relationship between the instructor and the class. Program 3 continues on the major theme of authority, focusing on some of the issues concerned with grading. We also explore indirect communications and the way individuals and what I'll be calling the class group as a whole send messages to the instructor, and the importance of the skill of being able to read those messages and to respond directly to them to get at underlying issues that may be very relevant to the content and to the process of the class. These issues often remain under the surface, and they can become powerful obstructions to ongoing learning. Another discussion during that same period of time has to do with the difficulty many instructors, particularly new instructors, feel in making a demand for work and setting high standards, particularly when students appear to be used to a culture of grade inflation. A final major theme explores boundary issues and the appropriateness of faculty making personal disclosures. Program 4 is the first session after the winter break, and it begins with our workshop group doing some recontracting. The group is now going to meet just once a month, and we want to talk about how to handle that. This session explores the issues that are involved in teaching research, policy, and program evaluation. These are the courses that instructors often feel students will begin with negative feelings. They'd much rather do electives. They want to do practice courses. These are the courses that they have less positive feelings about right from the start. We try to explore in this program how to make the connection between what students really want to learn and what these kinds of courses can teach. There's also a discussion of a very difficult subgroup of students in a BSW program. They're about to graduate, but they're presenting what appears to be immature behavior in the class. As part of our recontracting for this year, for the winter and spring semesters, we had agreed at each of the next 3 sessions I would present some ideas about group theory that has helped to inform me when I think about this thing called the hidden group in the classroom. And 3 foundation theorists, Bennis Shepard, developmental theory, Bion and emotionality theory, and Holman's social systems theory are the ones that I chose. So this first session, the 5th program, begins with me sharing the Bennis and Shepard model of group development. We then use that model to try to understand an example of the authority theme and the importance of the instructor confronting students who are not doing the reading. The session ends with a sharing of some very positive outcomes resulting from one of the PhD students' participants' willingness to take a risk, to follow the workshop's advice, and to share her negative midterm evaluations with her class. Program 6 begins with a brief description of Bion's emotionality theory of groups. Concepts such as fight and flight, projective identification are presented and are then applied to classroom examples from participants. The session also examines the impact of time, the stages of the school year on classroom process. 3 major issues emerge: student anxiety over their second semester grades, issues raised by BSW and MSW students as they're preparing to graduate, and concerns about getting a job or moving on to a graduate program. We take a good close look at how each of these issues need to be at least addressed in the class so that they don't block the continued ongoing learning, but also how to take the process of the classroom and make it more directly connected to the content of the course. Program 7 will be the last in this series, and it starts with a discussion of issues facing a PhD student who is new to teaching but is also visually impaired. The workshop participants explore how this instructor can deal with his obvious impairment in the first class, including addressing how students can help by verbalizing what are usually visual cues, such as rolling of one eyes, tuning out, etc. The second half of the session includes a presentation on a third group theorist, George Holman's, and an application of the social systems theory model in understanding the impact of the school and the environment on class behavior. The session ends with a participant discussing how to end her 1-year contract teaching in a BSW program and how to do it in a professional manner. It is my hope that these programs will be useful and helpful to you as you struggle with what I think is a very complex and difficult task. We can't just take all of our information and hand it over. There's a teaching and learning process that's involved, and the class group can have a powerful impact on this process. I hope these sessions are helpful to you in managing that class group.